Hello, Internet! Andrew Potter back again for another episode of the Night Circus. Today we will be reading something called Part 1 and then the next chapter. So I don't know what these... I assume these parts are just like, kind of like volumes or something like that of the time. And it'll just be leading us more, giving us kind of a sneak peek of something's to happen, kind of like some deep foreshadowing somehow. Part 1 is Primordium. The whole of Le Cercle de Rêves is formed by series of circles. Perhaps it is a tribute to the origin of the word circus, deriving from the Greek circus, meaning circle or ring. There are many such nods to the phenomenon of the circus in a historical sense, though it is hardly a traditional circus. Rather than a single tent with rings enclosed within, the circus contains clusters of tents like pyramids, some large and others quite small. They are set within circular paths, contained within a circular fence, looping and continuous. Frederick Thyssen, 1892. A dreamer is one who can only find his way by moonlight, and his punishment is that he sees the dawn before the rest of the world. Oscar Wilde, 1888. So both 19th century quotes. Both about circuses, of course. I don't know what that could be foreshadowing. Could be foreshadowing the importance of dreams or anything like that. Also should be noted that on the back there seems to be some sort of constellation on the back page. I don't know how clear that's going to come out, but there's a constellation there. I don't know what constellation that is, unfortunately. I would guess it's a snake? I don't know. So chapter 2, I guess, and these aren't marked by chapter number, so this is going to be fun to try to keep track of for these videos, is called Unexpected Post. It takes place in New York, February 1873. The man billed as Prospero, the enchanter, receives a fair amount of correspondence via the theater office, but this is the first envelope addressed to him that contains a suicide note, and it is also the first to arrive carefully pinned to the coat of a 5-year-old girl. The lawyer who escorts her to the theater refuses to explain despite the manager's protestations, abandoning her as quickly as he can with no more than a shrug and the tip of a hat. The theater manager does not need to read the envelope to know who the girl is for. The bright eyes peering out from under a cloud of unruly brown curls are smaller, wider versions of the magician's own. He takes her by the hand, her small fingers hanging limp within his. She refuses to remove her coat despite the warmth of the theater, giving only an adamant shake of her head when he asks her why. The manager takes the girl to his office, not knowing what else to do with her. She sits quietly on an uncomfortable chair beneath a line of framed posters advertising past productions, surrounded by boxes of tickets and receipts. The manager brings her a cup of tea with an extra lump of sugar, but it remains on the desk, untouched, and grows cold. The girl does not move, does not fidget in her seat. She stays perfectly still with her hands folded in her lap. Her gaze is fixed downward, focused on her boots that do not quite touch the floor. There's a small scuff on one toe. The laces are knotted in perfect bows. The sealed envelope from the second topmost button of her coat. The sealed envelope hangs from the second topmost button of her coat until Prospero arrives. She hears him before the door opens. His footsteps heavy and echoing in the hall, unlike the measured pace of the manager who has come and gone several times, quiet as a cat. There is also a package for you, sir, the manager says as he opens the door, ushering the magician into the cramped office before slipping off to attend to other theater matters, having no desire to witness what might become of this encounter. The magician scans the office, a stack of letters in one hand, a black velvet cape lined with shockingly white silk cascading behind him, expecting a paper-wrapped box or crate. Only when the girl looks up at him with her own eyes does he realize what the theater manager was referring to. Prospero the enchanter's immediate reaction upon meeting his daughter is a simple declaration of, "Well, fuck." The girl returns her attention to her boots. The magician closes the door behind him, dropping the stack of letters on the desk next to the teacup as he looks at the girl. He rips the envelope from her coat, leaving the pin clinging steadfastly to its button. While the writing on the front bears his stage name and the theater address, the letter inside greets him with his given name, Hector Bowen. He skims over the contents, any emotional impact desired by the author failing miserably, and finally, he pauses at the only fact that he deems relevant, that this girl, now left in his custody, is obviously his own daughter, and that her name is Celia. She should have named you Miranda, the man called Prospero, the enchantress says to the girl with a chuckle. I suppose she was not clever enough to think of it. The girl looks up at him again, dark eyes narrow beneath her curls. The teacup on the desk begins to shake. Ripples disrupt the calm surface as cracks tremble upon the glaze, and then it collapses in shards of floured porcelain. Cold tea pools in the saucer and drips onto the floor, leaving sticky trails along the polished wood. The magician's smile vanishes. He glances back at the desk with a frown, and the spilled tea begins seeping back up from the floor. The cracked and broken pieces stand and reform themselves around the liquid until the cup sits complete once more, soft swirls of steam rising into the air. The girl stares at the teacup, her eyes wide. Hector Bowen takes his daughter's face in the gloved hand, scrutinizing her expression for a moment before releasing her, his fingers leaving long red marks across her cheeks. You might be interesting, he says. The girl does not reply. He makes several attempts to rename her in the following weeks, but she refuses to respond to anything but Celia. Several months later, once he decides she is ready, the magician writes a letter of his own. He includes no address, but reaches its destination across the ocean nonetheless. And that is the end of that. Interesting. I'm intrigued. So the mother clearly committed suicide is the point to be taken there, and that Prospero or Hector is not an emotional man. He's clearly more of a probably scientific analysis fact kind of guy. Using science over reasoning, such as cause and effect. Using that as opposed to just randomness and insanity in that sense. It's good. It's good. I'm interested. I'm intrigued. I'm confused as to how it's going to tie. I assume it's going to tie in the fact that it's the same circus company as in the modern day. Or perhaps because I don't think it gave any indication of the time period at the beginning of the circus that apparently I was attending. No, it didn't, just as anticipation. So I'm going to assume that it's just going to be the same circus company that continues on into the modern age, or that it's taking place now and that I was just in line at a different time period, which I'll say is perfectly fine for a narrative device, as I can imagine myself at that time standing at the circus. So that is that. If there's anything there that maybe you wanted me to comment more on, feel free to leave that in the comments below, of course. And as always, feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you, and have a good one.